Welcome to my weekly self-important Magic the Gathering show. This week is Pick Up Azorius week. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 decks that are all fully built, so going through them should be easy. A lot of them are going to be very samey. But let's see what I did. So first one is Ayesha Tanaka Armorer. This is from the Legends Retold. The original, I don't think had either didn't have any abilities or didn't have good abilities, and cost way too much mana, because that's what it was like in the original Legend set. We were so thrilled back then that they had legendary creatures that we didn't care that most of them were just absolute rat garbage. So for 3 white blue, we have a 2/4 Human Artificer that says whenever Ayesha Tanaka Armor attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put any number of artifact cards with mana value less than or equal to Ayesha's power from among them into the battlefield tapped. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Ayesha can't be blocked as long as defending player controls 3 or more artifacts. That last part is really cool. So the thing is just have a deck full of artifacts that you want, especially ones that make her power higher. So next up we have Helm of the Host, which doesn't do that, but gives us non-legendary copies of Ayesha, so we can get attack with them and get their trigger higher, or get that trigger more often. Probably want to equip them too, but at mana value 2, you can at least skim the top 4 for mana rocks and put those into play. Buster Sword makes her power stronger, and then also you can draw a card and cast a spell for free from your hand. Ulthros Research Craft. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you draw a card and put a counter on the spacecraft, but you have to have 3 on this already. You remember Station, right? You tap a creature, put a number of charge counters on the station equal to that creature's power, and then once you get 3, you get that first ability I mentioned. And once you get up to 12 counters, you get the second ability, where it's flying 0/8 with +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Station only as a sorcery, so only on your turn and not when you're doing anything else. Hold on. Good old Vidalcan Archmage. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, draw a card. Brotherhood Regalia gives Ayesha unblockable and ward 2, and she's also an assassin. It equips for 1 on her because she's legendary. Prowler Helm can't be blocked except by walls. Also notice that these are things that she can grab with her base power. These two. Hold on. Flemmy Throat Blues. Psychic Paper also makes her unblockable. Ward 1. And also can be grabbed with her base power. Wrecking Ball Arm can be grabbed with her base power, but also will make her a 7/7. So, and can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And has only equips for 3. That's good. And because she costs 5, so by the time you cast her, you can cast this. So this is really good. Kappa Cannoneer, because we want good creatures in this deck as well. Your artifacts can help pay for this because it has improvise, so you can tap artifacts to pay for one of the generics. Has ward 4, which means that any spell, and I also believe ability that tries to target it is countered unless you pay 4, so it's nigh untargetable unless someone's just really willing to eat that ward cost. And then whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and it can't be blocked this turn. But I gotta check something. The things come into play tapped, for the record. The artifacts that she finds. I don't know if I said that correctly when I read her the first time, but that's why I went back. Because Darksteel Colossus It has trample and indestructible. If we can get her power up to 11, that's a great hit. If we get her power up to 12, Lightsteel Colossus is even better. They can't block because they come into play tapped. There is an artifact called Unwinding Clock that we probably should put in this deck. Now that I think about it, I'm gonna if I don't see it by the time we get to the end, I'm gonna see about taking out something to put that in. This puts artifacts on top of our library from our graveyard. That's good. This is an artifact land. That's another thing, is that it says artifact card. Any number of artifact cards with mana value less than her power, or equal to or less than her power. That means we can get these artifact lands into play. There's only 4, I think. 1 white. Well, there's more than 4 total, but in this deck there's going to be 1 white, 1 blue, 1 white and blue, and 1 colorless. Here's the colorless one. Then we have a bunch of other usual suspects. Then we're using these Dominaria United full arts. There's the other one. Oh, Power Depot, so there's 5. It adds 1 mana of any color, but only for artifact spells and the abilities of artifacts. Again, it can theoretically come into play as an extra land drop if we hit it off of Ayesha. There's the other one. So 2 of them are indestructible: the dual land and the colorless one. That's mildly interesting. Oh, there's another one. See another crime because it's also a clue. Look at that. And then there's the blue one. The monocolored ones can come into play untapped, but all the other ones come into play tapped. Treasure Vault. Okay, there's another one. Man, I'm the one who put this deck together and I forgot this. I gotta blow my nose, so it's gonna go quiet again. And then we have the planet. Once you get it up to 12 station, you can pay a blue and tap it to add blue for each artifact you control. You know, because just in case we need to tap or, legitimately put an artifact into play. Especially one of the big ones. Shadow Spear, of course, makes her slightly bigger. Gives her trample and lifelink. That's always nice. Can remove hexproof and indestructible from your opponent's stuff. Bluster Squall to tap their stuff down. He has an intervention to get rid of their artifacts and enchantments. Aetherize to mess with attacking. Cone of Cold to tap all of their stuff, but only at sorcery speed. I don't put this in a lot of decks nowadays, but like when I was doing these, I was throwing Cone of Cold down a lot. It either taps them down until their next untap step, taps them down, and then makes them not untap on their next untap tap. Then for a natural 20, they don't untap on their next untap step, and until our next turn, all their other stuff comes into play tapped on top of that. That is wild. Settle the Wreckage, Aether Spouts. So now we're into Lightning Greaves, Mirror Shield, Swiftfoot Boots, Champion's Helm, Darksteel Plate. You know, the stuff to protect her commander, and most of that can be grabbed pretty early with her ability. Ghostly Prison, Mithril Coat, Propaganda. You know, so making attacking us more difficult may as well. Whisper Silk Cloak, so we can't be blocked again. Hammer of Nizan gives us free equips, and also gives indestructible and +2/+0 to our commander, so that's all good. Akroma's Memorial, if we get our that Wrecking Ball arm thing down, this can come down with our ability, and gives flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, protection from black and from red to all of our stuff. Cauldron Complete, that's another thing that costs 7. That either we can Living Weapon makes a 0/0 germ and attaches this to it before state-based actions kill the germ. but it gets +5 supplies, first strike, trample, indestructible, haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, exile that creature. So that's almost unblockable unless they have stuff they don't mind going into exile. Soul Ring, that can be grabbed. Arcane Signet, Azorius Signet, Ethereum Sculptor, Marble Diamond, Mind Stone, Sky Diamond, Talisman of Progress, the Iron Crag, Thought Vessel, and Foundry Inspector, and Voyage Quick Welder can't, but not default, but like just with a little boost. Solemn Simulacrum, the Regalia. Again, I like this because you reveal until you hit the land, and the land comes onto the battlefield tapped, and it has a small crew cost of only 1. And it has haste, so you can do that right away. Then arm removal stuff, we had Mass Disruption. This is now Targeted Disruption. Path to Exile, Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Swords to Plowshares, Unwanted Remake, Parting Gust, Reality Shift, Generous Gift, Stroke of Midnight. Argentum Armor gives +6/+6, and also you destroy stuff on attack. Meteor Golem destroys stuff on entry. Ultimate Weapon destroys a creature on attack, and also gives +7/+7. Cityscape Leveler. Extinguisher Battleship destroys not creatures, but also can be turned into a Flying Trampler. Mech Titan Core, because that thing just amuses me. You can pay 5, exile the core, plus 5 other artifact creatures and/or vehicles to make a 10/10. That has Flying, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, and Haste. That is all 5 colors. And then when that token leaves, which means if it's exiled or dies, you get the 4 other artifacts back, but not the Mech Titan Core. The Mech Titan Core is destroyed. Mirrored into Besiege. When we cast an artifact spell, we get a mirror. I generally don't do the other one. Though, we could do the Phyrexian one, where if there are 15 or more, we draw a card, discard a card, and then if there are 15 or more artifacts in our graveyard, target opponent loses the game. But I'd rather do the first one. That's more fun. Sai gives us Thopters when we cast artifacts. Fish and Construction also gives us Thopters when we cast artifacts. Okay, so I did not see Unwinding Clock. Like, I feel like the most obvious choice might be Mech Titan Core, but that sparks joy. I think Efficient Construction might be the way to go. Because it's a 4 mana enchantment, where Sai and Mirrodin Besieged are 3 mana enchantments. Oh wait, no. Mirrodin is a 3 mana enchantment, and Sai is a 3 mana creature. And Sai can also draw us cards if we sacrifice artifacts. This might, yeah. Efficient Construction isn't an efficient spell, maybe, so we can remove that. And then I think it was Unwinding Clock. Well, it added itself to a section called Untap. Untap all artifacts you control during each other player's untap step. Okay, so it doesn't untap during our untap step. So let's see if there's a better option. Oh. Untap all is permanent. Untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. Intruder Alarm, no. Reveille squad kind of does it, but only for attack, and that's the most important part. But that's only creatures. There we go. Unstoppable Plan, I feel, is the way. Because I only care about the beginning of our end step anyway. Because if it waits until the next player's untap step, they get a full turn of our stuff is tapped. So I think Unstoppable Plan is the way I want to go. Instead of Unwinding Clock. Now, if Unwinding Clock did our untap step as well, that'd be completely different. Now I'm going to double check to make sure I've optimized all printings to my liking. No to you. And no to you. Interesting that the full art is 50 cents cheaper than the not full art. That's always interesting to me when that's a thing. Slightly older version is 30 cents cheaper than the newest version. That is also mildly interesting. Probably has to do with printing. Anyway, overwrite those 4 cards. So that's Tanaka Armorer. I think I did well with it. I do like, I mean, she can only look at 4 cards. And I could have put in the chair that doubles her triggers to get it twice, so we could look at the top 8, and that actually might be a good idea. And then I think I'll get rid of Mirrodin Besieged for that. Because it is also a do-nothing enchantment. At least Psymaster Thopterist is a 1/4, so that's a decent blocker on the ground. I know some people don't like the Roaming Throne, but I feel better about putting the Roaming Throne in a deck where the thing that, where only like one thing is getting doubled. That's not what I meant to click. I was thinking up here because I wanted to check. Oh, did I accidentally change my planes back to dumb planes? Yes, I did. Glad I checked. DM. Go back to that. But anyway, I think we only have like 1 Artificer. No, we have 2, don't we? Yeah. So we get 2 Thopters whenever we cast an Artifact spell. And get to look at the top 8 cards of our library in 2 groups of 4. How many creatures are in this deck? 12. So this is this has way fewer creatures than I normally like, but there are a couple of like vehicles and stuff over here. A Thopter can crew the Regalia. Just that I mentioned that. That's funny. And we go back to categories. There we go. And now we have passive income, which I had a very specific design philosophy for this deck. Also at 100. So first let's go to the Council of 4. Whenever a player draws their second card during their turn, you draw a card. Sweet. Whenever a player casts their second spell during their turn, you create a 2/2 white knight creature token. Neat. It is 3 white blue for an 08 human noble. They are powerless, but they take up a lot of space. Rug of Smothering. Whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 1 life for each spell they cast this turn. Anti that Storm player. Aboleth Spawn. It has Flash and Ward 2. And Probing Telepathy. Whenever a creature entering the battlefield under an opponent's control causes a triggered ability of that creature to trigger, you may copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So whenever a creature comes into play under an opponent's control, if it has an enters the battlefield effect, Aboleth Spawn lets us copy that. Esper Sentinel. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, we draw a card unless they pay X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power, normally 1. Good old $50 Ristic Buddy. Land tax. At the beginning of our upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than us, we may search our library for up to 3 basic land cards and reveal them, put into our hand, and shuffle our library. Weathered Wayfarer. White tap. That's not passive, but it still requires our opponents to have more lands than us, so it requires our opponents to be doing well. Search the library for a land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only if an opponent controls more lands than you. Archivist of Ogma has Flash, and then whenever an opponent searches their library, you draw a card and gain a life. That's the passive income, by the way, is that we get stuff passively for our opponents having or doing stuff. That one guy, we actually have to tap him, so it's not passive, but I think I was running out of stuff to put in the deck. Fairy Mastermind, Flash and Flying. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. And then each player draws a card. We can pay 4 for that. Flumph. It's an 04 with Flying, but also Defender. Whenever Flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. Quain. Itinerant Meddler. Itinerant. That's a word I don't know what it means. Each player draws a card. Each player who draws a card this way also gains a life. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Ledger's Treasure connives. In the connive, you draw a card and then discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, Ledger's Treasure gets a +1/+1 counter. Ever Watchful Threshold. Whenever an opponent attacks, if they attacked you and or a planeswalker you control, draw a card. Reparations. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a spell that targets us or a creature we control, you may draw a card. So basically, if we feel someone's targeting us, we cast this targeting them. Smuggler's Share. At the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn. Then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn. Verity Circle. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared an attacker, you may draw a card. And then we can also tap something that doesn't have flying for 5 mana. Wojek I want to call him Wojak. You know, yeah, Wojak Investigator. Flying in Vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate for each opponent who has more cards in hand than you. Investigating means you make a clue token, and a clue token is an artifact token that you can pay 2 mana and sacrifice. You have to tap it. No, you don't have to tap the artifact. And then you draw a card. Alms Collector. It has flash, and if an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead you and that player each draw a card. I like that. They have to be drawing 2 or more, so if they're only drawing 1, this guy doesn't care. Hold on. Water. Beza, the Bounding Spring. When Beza, the Bounding Spring enters, create a treasure token, and if an opponent controls more lands than you. You gain more life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. Draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. Faramir, Prince of Illithian. At the beginning of your end step, choose an opponent. At the beginning of that player's end step, you draw a card if they did not attack you that turn. Otherwise, you create 3 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. Excuse me. Mangara the Diplomat has lifelink. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. Trouble in Pairs. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. Whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. Then we're in our lands. Adarkar Wastes, Command Tower, Desert Beach, Flood Farm Verge, Glacial Fortress, Hollowed Fountain, Idyllic Beachfront, Irrigated Farmland, Plain Old Island, Meticulous Archive, Mistvale Plains. As long as we control at least 2 or more white permanents, we can pay a white and tap this to put a card from our graveyard at the bottom of our library. Mystic Gate, Nimbus Maze, another Plains, Port Town, Prairie Stream, Reliquary Tower. With all the card draw, having a land, with all the potential card draw, I should say, having a land that gives us no maximum hand size is handy. My mouse from my other computer fell on the floor. I'm just going to pick that up. You know what? Can you sit right there? Yeah. Maybe sitting it there instead of where I have been keeping it will make it not fall off the table so much. Sea of Clouds, Temple of Enlightenment, Authority of the Consuls. Creatures your opponents control enter tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain a life. Bluster Squall to tap all of our opponent's stuff. That's actually really funny with that other card, now that I think about it. Heliod's Intervention, destroy them artifacts and enchantments. There's that thing about gaining life, but let's be honest. If you need that, you're in trouble. Aetherize, Cone of Cold to tap stuff down again. Settle the Wreckage, Aether Spouts, Ghostly Prison, Karmic Justice. Whenever a spell or an ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy target permanent that opponent controls. Keep your hands off my artifacts and enchantments. It also covers battles and planeswalkers, but I don't think I have any of those in this deck. Propaganda. Michiko Konda's Truth Seeker. Whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you, that's us, the player, that player sacrifices a permanent. So that's burn spells and creatures, or burn abilities on creatures or other, effects. Anytime, but it's damage, not loss of life, for the record, which I find interesting. Because damage is loss of life, but loss of life is not damage. Soul Ring, pry it from a cold dead hands. Interesting that this is the cheapest version, or it's the version they picked to be cheapest, but whatever. Arcane Signet, Azorius Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Felwar Stone, Knight of the White Orchid. When Knight of the White Orchid enters the battlefield, and if opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a plains card, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle. And comes into play untapped. And it doesn't say basic plains either, so that's nice. Marble Diamond, Mind Stone, Sky Diamond, Talisman of Progress. Tataru Taru. When Tataru Taru enters, you draw a card and target opponent may draw a card. May. They don't have to. Whenever an opponent draws a card, if it isn't that player's turn, create a tap treasure token. This ability only triggers once each turn. Considering we have ways to make other people draw cards, that's why we did that. And this is also basically a soft counter for well, it's not really a counter since we only make treasure tokens, but if other people have similar cards as us, we get treasure tokens. The Iron Crag, Thought Vessel, Archaeomancer's Map. When this artifact enters, search your library for up to 2 basic plains cards, reveal them, and put into your hand and shuffle. Whenever a land an opponent controls enters, if that player controls more lands than you, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Claim a Jumper. It's a rabbit mercenary. It's so great. Has Vigilance. When Claim Jumper enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a plains card. Doesn't have to be basic. And put it into the battlefield tapped. Then, if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So we can get up to 2 lands on this if 2 other people have more lands in play than us. Discerning Financier. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, create a treasure token. Then you can pay 2 and a white to choose another player. That player gains control of target treasure you control. You draw a card. I find that kind of neat. Monologue Tax. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. Keeper of the Accord. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more creatures than you, you get a 1/1 White Soldier creature token. At the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a basic plains card, put into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Then go good old Solemn Simulacrum, Path to Exile, Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Swords to Plowshares, Unwanted Remake, Parting Gust, Reality Shift, Generous Gift, Lorn of the First Path. When Lorn of the First Path enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. She also has Vigilance, and also you can tap her to have you and target opponent draw a card. Stroke of Midnight, Aven Mind Sensor, Flash Flying. If opponent would search their library, they only search the top 4 cards of their library. Just a little stacks piece for fun. Charismatic Conqueror. Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. You might notice that this deck is sort of missing a win con. I could put something dumb like Approach of the Second Sun in, which is a 6 and a white, I think. I think it costs 7. And if you cast this spell, if it's the second time you've cast the spell this game, you win the game. But if it's the first time you cast it, you put it back into your library like 7th from the top. So yeah, this is definitely a silly deck. That's probably more annoying than anything else. Approach of the Second Sun would at least allow us to win. But I like what we came up with. The next deck is a hot pile of garbage. It's the Powerstone couple. And honestly, it's fitting for these two to have a garbage deck. So Rebbec, Architect of Ascension. Just a quick lore thing. Her and her husband over here, Glacian, Powerstone Engineer, are from the Thran Empire, the same empire Yawgmoth is from. And in fact, Yawgmoth, part of his downfall, in addition to him just being a real creepy, disgusting guy. Like, he was handsome if you've seen his card, but like his brain was creepy and disgusting. But he had the hearts for Rebbec and poisoned Glacian to keep him sick while pretending to be a physician to heal him. He poisoned him by hiding probably this very crystal in his stomach, probably a much smaller one, I hope. Because these Power Stones, they're radioactive, or at least Magic the Gathering's version of radioactive. So this thing he's doing with his hand where he's touching it, not good. There's another character in Magic the Gathering called Venser. He also had Power Stone sickness, which, when described, sounded a lot like radiation sickness. So that's where people get the idea that these things are in some way radioactive, and that's how they power things. I don't know. It's still magic. But anyway, Rebbec, Architect of Ascension, and yeah, that is some Phyrexian lore from the part of the Magic of the Gathering story that I really like. We don't get a whole lot of that. Like, there's one book titled The Thran. I recommend it. It's a good read. It basically shows how Yawgmoth discovered Phyresis, the process that he used to turn people into Phyrexians. It is cool as heck. So artifacts you control have protection from each converted mana cost among artifacts you control. So one thing you want is to have artifacts with a bunch of different mana values. Or at least key mana values, like 1 and 2. And probably 3 and 4 as well. There's a let's see, probably not 5 or 6, maybe 7 if you're worried about it. No, actually 5 for the creatures. Because then yeah, it's like whatever spells you're worried about, like Blasphemous Act is like 13, and good luck with that. But like spot removal, you can at least protect your stuff from your artifacts from spot removal. Anyway, Glacian, Powerstone Engineer. Oh, she's a 3 and a white for a 3/4 Human Artificer. Glacian is 5 and a blue for a Human Artificer. He's a 3/6. 3/4. He's got a bigger butt than his wife. Tap him and tap X untapped artifacts you control. Look at the top X cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and put the rest in your graveyard. So, the floor is you tap him, tap one artifact, and simply draw a card. So it really depends on if you want to put stuff in your graveyard or not. There are 2 cards I realized I probably should have put in this deck, but I don't think I did. Well, we'll see him if we see him. We have Esper Sentinel. He is an artifact that gives that if once what the heck's her name again? Rebbec. Once she's out, we'll give all of our artifacts protection from mana value 1. Buster Sword gives protection from mana value 3. Ulthros also gives protection from mana value 3. I'm not saying what they do because they were in other decks that we did. Vidalcan Archmage is not an artifact, so it does not give nor receive protection from Rebec's ability. Just draws as a card when we cast artifacts. Kappa Cannoneer because we need good cards and also gives protection from mana value 6. Darksteel Colossus and Blightsteel Colossus gives us protections from mana values 11 and 12. For what it's worth. Academy Ruins for if we get artifacts into our graveyard, we can at least put them back on top of our library. And I did not see 2 artifacts that I would like to have seen. I am going to grab them after we look through it. But I'd have to see what we want to take out. Ancient Den. So this has this exact same land base as Ayesha, the Armorer. Only I liked the Final Fantasy lands for it, even though Dominaria would have worked just fine. But it's because these are giant crystals looking things. And, I don't know, this just gave the same feel. Yep. And then you're going to see some more of the same. Lightning Greaves, protections from mana value 2. Protection from mana value 3 again. We want to protect our commanders. Ghostly Prison. Liberator. So, you may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a spell, if the number of mana spent to cast that spell is greater than Liberator, or is a Battlethopter's power, put a +1/+1 counter on Liberator. And I just had an idea for a card to put in one of the other decks. I hope I remember it that long. I'm going to write it down really quick. Oh, I did not open up this. Hold on. Hopefully me writing that sentence reminds me to do it. You may... Whoops. Where are you? You got put in protection, I guess because casting stuff at flash speed counts as protecting your stuff. Whatever. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell is greater than Liberator or is Battle Power out there, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So that's cool. And it's any spell. It doesn't have to be an artifact spell or a colorless spell. Mithril Coat. Also, he is mana value 3, so that's not a new one. Propaganda. Shimmermere. That's a backup for Urza's Battlethopter, even though he's objectively worse, because he doesn't get bigger. Hammer of Nazan. Now we have protection from mana value 4, and can make our one of our commanders indestructible, just like the other things. Cauldron Complete protects us from 7. Soul Ring protects us from 1 again. 2. Boundary Inspector to make it cheap. Yep. Joyous Familiar. Solemn Simulacrum. The Regalia. Mirror Retriever. Emery Lurker of the Lock. Stuff that gets our artifacts back from the graveyard, just in case they get put there with what's his name? Same with her, even though she's the most expensive thing to do it with. Junk Diver. The thing about Junk Diver, Workshop Assistant, and what was the other one? Mirror Retriever. We haven't even seen Workshop Assistant yet, I don't think. There it is. Is that they have to die, so we need a way to have them die. Salvation Engine can get any artifact from our graveyard when it attacks. And it's Cruz 6, but makes our other artifact creatures bigger. It's a 6/10 by itself, so that's cool. And then Bluster Squall, Path to Exile, Pongify, Repetitive, blah, 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 Liberty Loop. All of those spells. Cold might come out. And then Argentum Arbor, that's, I think, our first mana value 6. Mana, and then mana value 7s again to destroy stuff. Mana value 8. Psymaster Thopterus here again. I don't think there was anything I wanted to put in here, because that isn't a triggered ability, and that is not a triggered ability. So we have, if we go here, and we sort it by mana value, we have protection from mana value 0, protection from mana value 1, protection from mana value 2, mana value 3, mana value 4, not that much, but it's still existent. I mean, stuff that doesn't target, we don't get protection from. There's mana value 6, there's mana value 5, there's only one there, but it exists. Mana value 7, mana value 8, but no 9, no 10, but 11 and 12. Like, so remember, protection means it does not take damage from, cannot be targeted by, and cannot be blocked by. But things that do not target but destroy or exile will still hit them, if applicable. This deck, you might notice, looks a lot like the Ayesha Tanaka deck, only it has more, only I took out some things from Tanaka's deck that I don't remember. I don't remember the differences, and it's only been a couple of minutes. But to put in, well, one, I have 2 commanders, and 2, there's these 6 recursion pieces. So something came out to put 7 cards in. Couldn't tell you without wasting time. We are going to do this really quick. No to this, and no to this. This just goes to show that between like yesterday and today, prices just flipped, I guess. Or I did this optimize once and didn't do it again after changing the deck a little bit. I don't hate this deck as much as I thought I would, but it really is just Tanaka. I'm gonna stop trying to hurt my brain over how her first name is pronounced, because I know I'm getting it wrong no matter what I say. But Tanaka's deck and this deck are so very similar. But whatever. This is a deck that I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with it. Rasputin, Russia's greatest love machine, lover of the Russian queen. That was a cat who really was gone. 1 white blue for a 4/1. He has no butt. When he sits down, it has to be on something with a lot of cushion, because he certainly doesn't have any himself. Or you can also say that he skipped leg day. When Rasputin, oh boy, the Oneiromancer, that has to be Dream. Because you put Dream counters on it for each opponent you have, so that's 3. For the record. 3 at most. Each opponent creates a 1/1 red goblin creature token. There's probably some lore reason to that. Like, you would have to ask the people who made the card. There's something in the Legends lore that there were a couple of books based on Legends, but I don't know if Rasputin shows up there. Anyway, you can tap Rasputin to remove 1 or more dream counters from him and to add that much colorless mana. Neat, okay. Or you can remove a dream counter from remove 1 dream counter to get a 2/2 knight creature token with protection from red. Neat either way. I don't think I did anything with caring about these knight creature tokens, if I'm being entirely honest. But what I did do is something completely silly and probably unhelpful. Felia, Exuberant Shepherd. Flash. Whenever Felia, Exuberant Shepherd attacks, exile to up to 1 other target non-land permanent. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it enters under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Felia. Soul Herder. Whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Soul Herder. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile 1 other target creature card from you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Brago, King Eternal. Whenever Brago, King Eternal deals combat damage to a player, exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Also has flying. Displacer Kitten. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Flying. Kaikar, Zephyr Awakener. Has flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose 1. Exile another target creature you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Or create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Teleportation Circle. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Thassa, Deep Dwelling. As long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, this isn't a creature, it has indestructible. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. And then we can pay 3 and a blue to tap another creature. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Deadeye Navigator, Soulbound. You may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. As long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has blue, 1 and a blue. Exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Naban, Dean of Iteration. If a wizard you control entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers additional time. Rasputin is a wizard, in case I didn't mention that. He is a human wizard. Panharmonicon. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers additional time. Roaming Throne, Ward 2. As Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. Starfield Vocalist. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. It also has this warp ability in case you want to get it on turn 2. In case that's super important. But it goes into exile at the end of that turn, and you can cast it from exile for its normal mana cost. Gandalf the White. This is the card that I want to put in another deck. You may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though I have Flash. This guy could have made it into either of my other artifact decks, but that would have lowered the number of artifacts, and this guy costs like 5. If a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Virtue of Knowledge. We can pay 2 as an instant to copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. And then as an enchantment, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Rotate card. Mirror Room. That's the 2 on a blue side. When you unlock this door, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it's a reflection in addition to its other creature types. Not as important. And then Fractured Realm. It costs 5 and 2 blue. But if a triggered ability, if a permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Just saying. The Ozolith. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from it onto target creature. Then we have Esper Sentinel. Dour Port Mage. Whenever one or more other creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. And then you can pay 1 in a blue and tap, return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. Candlekeep Sage. Commander creatures you own have, when this creature enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. Hey, Mongar the Diplomat. You know, the one that we get to draw cards when other people do stuff. Trouble in Pairs. Same thing, but it's not a creature and slightly different triggers. Council of 4 is in this deck too, because why not? This was me struggling to come up with cards, so I decided to put the jerk, like the passive income cards again. Then Darksteel Colossus and Blightsteel Colossus. It's just that kind of day today. And also, let's be fair, if we can get a lot of those counters on Rasputin, he can cast these himself. And then this has the non-artifact rendition of my lands. Then Bluster Squall, yep, then that's my Mass Disruption. And then Flux Channeler, whenever you cast non-creature spell, Proliferate. It's presumably Dream counters on Rasputin. And then we got to protect Rasputin and ourselves, so that's what all that is. And then our ramp. And then we have the original Rasputin Dreamweaver. 4 white blue for a 4/1. That's what it was like back then. I think we kind of do things the opposite way now. This thing's expensive because it's a legend. And like, I think when they first came out, you were limited to 1 copy in your deck, never mind only being able to have 1 on the field, and then only 1 person could have 1 on the field. And you should look up to people who have more time and energy to talk about it. The legend rule was wild. And the legends weren't even good. Well, some of them weren't good. Some of them, I think, could still see play today. Like the one that can take control of a creature as long as you keep her tapped. That has a name that I'm not going to try to pronounce. I think people would still play that today. But I think that was from Ice Age and not Legends. Which is why they did the Legends Retold, just to give them these old characters better cards. So, so far, overly expensive 4/1. Put 7 counters on Rasputin when brought into play. They are still dream counters for the record. Because we can go to card info and get the Oracle. He is still a human wizard. So, enters with 7 dream counters. That does not get doubled by any of our doublers or additional triggerers, because that's an enters with, not a when enters. And then, without having to tap, you can just remove dream counters from Rasputin to add colorless mana. Or you can remove dream counters from Rasputin to prevent 1 damage that would be dealt to Rasputin. Which is funny. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if Rasputin is started the turn untapped, you can add an additional dream counter to Rasputin, but it maxes out at 7. Notice nothing about that is about goblins, so I have to assume that that's something in the lore. Now we're into our single targeted removal. I don't think there's anything new here. Argentum Intermediate Golem. Spine of Ishsa is in here. I talked about this in another episode. When Spine of Ishsa enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. When Spine of Ishsa is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. But it is an artifact, and at least one of our things, I think the teleportation circle, I don't know about any of the other ones, can blink this so we can do it again. And that's why Spine of Ishsa made it into this deck when I was removing it from other decks. Ultima Weapon. Gotta give Rasputin more butt. That's what a lot of that is. Cityscape Leveler. Extinguisher Battleship. Elish Norn. This is another thing, but also it ended up in stacks because it prevents our opponents from getting enter the battlefield effects. 1,000-year elixir. We may activate the abilities of creatures we control as though they had haste. And then we can also untap target creature by paying 1 and tapping it. So this is like if we really need 2 of those 2/2 knights. Whoops. How many creatures did this deck end up with? 23. That's a lot more respectable than that other deck that we looked at. So yeah, I didn't do, like, nothing in here cares about those knights, but we can still make them. Oh no, I guess one tangentially cares about the knights, and that's 1,000-year elixir. Doesn't so much care about the knights, but it does allow me to make the knights. Because there's no reason to untap it to make for the dream counter one, because the dream counter, I mean not the dream counter one, but the colorless mana one, because the colorless mana one, you just remove the number of counters you need at the time anyway. Was there anybody else that had a tap ability? I mean, you could untap Brago King Eternal after he attacks. Or Felia after she attacks? I'm going to go with they. Doesn't really matter. They're a good dog. So I'm going to do this song and dance. So the plan is, basically, to use as much of this colorless mana as we can every turn, and then flicker them to get that colorless mana back. Though that does leave him unprotected because all of the equipment will fall off. So I probably... Let's take out the 1,000-year elixir. Equip. I think it's a creature. Flash. T. Creature. I don't think... Nope, that's not gonna... There it is. Leonin Shikari. You may activate equip abilities anytime you could cast an instant. There. So after we blink Rasputin, if we have mana left over, whoops, that's not where my equipment are. My equipment are over here. If any of these are in play, we can immediately equip Rasputin again. And then we're just gonna... The only things it's showing is that, so we're just gonna cancel out of that. And close that. And now we have Shards of Hope. Another... It's like... I think that Rasputin deck is interesting. It could obviously be better. Like, I had no idea what I was doing with it, really. But, like, there's an idea there that I'm a fan of. So now we're on Shards of Hope. Starring Niko, Shards of Hope. Get in me on the comments if I don't call them a they at any point in time. They are a they. They identify as they. The singular they, don't be a jerk. When Niko, Light of Hope enters, create 2 shard tokens. Okay. Then you can pay 2 and tap Niko. Exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies of that creature until the beginning of the next end step. Return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. I read it the way I read it and not the way it's written to hopefully make it easier to understand. So basically, Niko makes shards. The shards are enchantments that are superior clues, because you know how clues are pay 2, sacrifice, draw a card? This is that, but you get to scry one first. So Niko has better clues. They're also enchantments instead of artifacts for what that's worth. And then I think I copied basically the whole blink section. Yep. And oh, and he's a wizard too. Look at that. So I think I just also copied the whole copy section wholesale. You know, just to... Oh, I also added an Anointed Procession because that makes tokens. So we get double tokens, double triggers, Roaming Throne again. Yep, Gandalf the White again. Esper Sentinel again. Dowerport Mage again. Yep, Candlekeep's Age again. Here's another different card. Okay. Niko Eris, the Planeswalker. So, yeah, Niko Eris got desparked during... so this is from Kaldheim. That's before the Phyrexian invasion. Niko Eris got desparked in the Phyrexian invasion. But, hey, it's still alive. I'm going to need more water soon. When Niko Eris enters the battlefield, create X shard tokens. So this is a way to get more shard tokens into play. Up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Whenever that creature deals combat or deals damage this turn, so to a creature or to a player, return it to its owner's hand. That could be cool. That's the +1. -1. Niko Eris does 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn. And remember, shards can draw you cards, so, you know, there's that. And then -1 to create a shard token. He doesn't have an ultimate, but that's fine. I think he's... See, there, I did it. Let's get on me. They are perfectly serviceable. As far as... Well, like, they're a low-threat planeswalker. Sort of. That, like, depending on what creatures you have in play, that +1 tells you how dangerous that +1 is. And honestly, you don't even have to attack with that creature. You just be like, this creature theoretically can't be blocked. I'm not attacking with it, but it can't be blocked. So you don't have to return it to your hand. You're just pointing out at that. That's the thing that you did, just to get the +1. Because you're going to have to +1, otherwise you're going to run out of -1s to do. Vanguard the Diplomat again, Trouble in Pairs again, the Council of Four again. Oh, but that's right. I'm like, I want good cards. So this is on the list of things that our shards can turn into. Now, when they turn into them, they do not get any lore counters, and they do not get sacrificed for having no lore counters on it. They get sacrificed for having all the lore counters on them. So so the shards would only turn into 3/3 indestructibles. They would not create us any White Knight creature tokens, but we still kind of wanted some Knights of the Round because it creates a bunch of Knight creature tokens. And then also, what we'd want to do is when this 5th ability is on the stack, excuse me, jeez, that's when we turn. Wow, that's actually funny. I gotta read something really quick. They become copies. So they're not leaving, they're just changing forms. They don't transform because they're tokens. If they transformed, like, they would leave, and then since they're tokens, they'd stay gone. So I just... Wow, that's actually kind of funny. So all of our... where were we? Where's Knights of the Round? Oh, it's the first one here. So when this ability is on the stack, because it happens after our draw step, which is the very beginning of our main phase, our first main phase, when this ability is on the stack that says other creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn, put an indestructible counter on them, you activate Niko's ability to turn all of your shards into copies of this, or honestly anything else, it doesn't matter. If you have something better, and then they get indestructible counters, which, if I'm correct, they would keep because they're staying in play the whole time. They're just turning back into shards, and now they're indestructible shards. And the next time you use Niko's ability, and I just had another thought, and I don't know if this works, because Niko's ability exiles Knights of the Round while this ability's on the stack. It'll come back and be at the beginning of its thing, so you'll be chapter 1 again. If that's how that works, I just now thought of this. I just thought it was a cool card that I wanted in the deck. This is way better than I thought it was. If it works how I think it works. People who know rules, somebody please. I know it's not great because this is an 8-mana spell. Don't care. It could be cool. Cool doesn't have to be good. And then we got the 2 Colossi because I have no imagination. And then this has the non-artifact version. And I used the Theros Beyond Death because he is from Theros. No, he's not. Is he not? And I called him he twice. I'm sorry. I'm bad at this. Are they not? Where are they from? Are they actually from Kaldheim? No, I think, even though they never appeared in a Theros set, I think they are from Theros. Because I know that they got mad that they had a destiny, and so they intentionally sandbagged their own destiny, and that ignited their spark. So they became a planeswalker Because no, Mom, I don't want to. They are a great character. So we got our Greaves, our Boots, our Plate, our Prison, our Coat, our Propaganda, our Soul Ring. You know, all of the usual stuff again. Bluster Squall, all of these. And notice that my single and multi-targets are in the same spot. That's because I just could copy-paste them. Cone of Cold is here again. Settle the Wreckage, Aether Spouts. Argentum Arm for Manima. Spine of Ishsa, because it's the, you know, it's, since one of our things can blink it instead. Ultima Weapon, let's see, Escape Leveler, Extinguisher Battleship. And then Summon Bahamut. Again, we would honestly do it during any point of this. Like, obviously, it's... Well, to be honest, we'd probably do it to save it from removal. Because depending on the mana value of other permanents we control, letting the 4 go off might just win us the game. But we can use Niko's ability to save this if someone targets it. And then when it comes back, we just get the first chapter again. And I know it costs 9. And I know we're not in a deck with a lot of ramp. But I don't care. Let a man dream. And then Elish Norn again. Oh yeah, and by the way, Summon Knights of the Round, not a legend. The Colossi, not legends. Bahamut, not a legend. Heck, none of these things are legends either, but, you know. Well, no, several of these things are. Thassa and Kaikar are. And Brago. And Felia. Okay, so we have a lot of legends. I don't know what I was doing pointing over here. But yeah, all of our non-legends are worth copying for one reason or another. Like if we want to do bad attacks just to get more lands into play, for example, we can turn them in, or no, to draw more cards. We can turn them into Solemn Simulacrum. Oh, and then Solemn would come back and give us another basic land from our deck. Yeah, I like this deck. Like the decks, these decks, not objectively good, but I still like what I did with them. Oh, let's do this really quick. The Conjurer's Closet. So next we have Star Trek Voyager. This was when Aether Drift came out, and I realized Star Trek Voyager is a much funnier joke for stuff from Edge of Eternities. But I believe the names of these guys' faction has the word Voyager in it. So let's go through this really quick, but not too quick. Although the next deck I'm probably gonna rebuild. Because it's built on like 1/4 of Idea, and it's like one of the worst ones, I think, as far as Legends Retold goes, at least for me. There's probably people who came up with much better decks, but we're not talking about that one. We're talking about this one. It's Mendicant Core Guidelight, a white and a blue for a star 3 robot. Heck yeah, robot. Mendicant Core's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. Sweet. It also has the ability, Start Your Engines. Which means, if you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once each on your turns when opponent loses life. Max speed is 4. Max speed is the only speed that matters. Nothing cares if your speed is 3. Nothing cares if your speed is 2. Nothing. The only time they care if your speed is 1 is if your speed isn't 1 and is in fact 0. Then it'll set it to 1. Other than that, don't care. But if at max speed, so if you've caused 4 life losses over the course of 4 turns, over the course of any number of turns, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 generic mana. If you do copy that artifact spell, the copy becomes a token. That's some great BOGO deal there. Then we have Cyberman Patrol, 2 for a 2/2. Boy, that feels like a picture and not even arts that Anton something made. So either sorry Anton, it doesn't look like a picture, or congratulations Anton, your picture looks kind of realistic. Artifact creatures you control have Afflict, which means whenever a creature with Afflict becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life anyway. Afflict is a great ability, in my opinion. Mechanized Production. This is if you control 8 things, 8 or more artifacts with the same name on your upkeep, you win. I could probably take that out. It also creates a copy of the enchanted artifact, so that gets it on the way. I took it out of some other decks that I had that had blue in them, but I'm like, you know what, whatever, we'll keep it in this one. That's how they win the race. Then we have good old Esper Sentinel. The reality chip made it into this deck, because it's artifact, creature, equipment, and jellyfish. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. As long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, because it can be an equipment, you can play lands and cast spells from the top of your library, and then it costs 2 and a blue to equip it. They call it reconfigure to be separate from equip, because it means when you reconfigure, it's either equip or unequip. You can't unequip equipment. It's only on the ground once and falls off if the creature dies. You can never set it down ever again. You can only hand it to another creature. I find that mildly interesting. Forensic Gadgeteer. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. That did not make it into a bunch of my other 2 artifact decks, as it turns out. Mildly interesting. So that's the creates a clue, and then also makes clues easier to use. And it doesn't reduce Mendicant's thing because it doesn't go below 1. So then we have the Research Craft again, the Archmage again, Cap Cannoneer again, Darksteel Colossus again, Brightsteel Colossus again. Because, like, why pretend to have any other top end? And honestly, doing all of these decks in a row for a show like this really kind of just shows you that unless you're handicapping yourself on purpose, staples are staples. You just go with the same stuff. And this has the artifact suite of basics. Oh, I forgot to change the basics from dumb basics. Well, we'll be doing that soon. And remember, these are artifacts, so they make Mendicant stronger. Shadow Spear is always a good idea. I feel like that this is just a good idea to put in decks because of the activated ability. To get rid of Hexproof and Indestructible. I know someone who hates both of those abilities. I've come to terms with them, but I like throwing this into decks. Go, hey, look, we can remove Hexproof or Indestructible. They actually like Shroud because it's fair, and they like Ward because you can get around it as long as you're willing to pay. And then our usual removal suite. Well, no, that's the Mass Disruption. Then Lightning Greaves, Mirror Shield, Swiftfoot Boots, the Helm, Liberator, Shimmer Mirror, Hammer of Nizan, Cauldron Complete, Soul Ring, Therium Sculptor, nothing. Nope, nothing surprising there. And then our targeted removal. Nothing. Okay, so here's a new addition. Dawnsire's Sunstar Dreadnought. This is the Federation Starship Super Voyager. So it has the station ability. I think I explained it this episode earlier, like a half hour ago or more. But you can tap a creature to put counters on this equal to its power. Do that at sorcery speed. And then when it has 10 counters on it, whenever you attack, Dawnspire deals 100 damage to one target creature or planeswalker. This is more funny in red decks where you can have that Brash Taunter guy, because it doesn't say creature opponent controls. So you can target your own Brash Taunter, that he will absorb the power of the Death Laser like he was charging a Spirit Bomb, and Kamehameha, just to continue the Dragon Ball Z jokes, right it directly at one of your opponents, and that's funny. And then you can also put 20 counters on it to make it a flying 20/20, which is also very impressive. Honestly, you don't want to do that because it makes it also it's only an artifact until it gets 20, then it becomes a creature, and that makes it easier to get rid of. But I gotta remember just to put this into decks that I have Brash Taunter in just for the lulz. Anyway, Argentum Armor, Meteor Golem, Spine of Ishsa made it into here. Probably just because it's an artifact, so that after it does its thing, it still makes Mech Titan or Mechatant Core 1 stronger. And if we pay 8, we get 2 of them if we have our if we're at max speed. We don't have any way to sacrifice them, but hey. Ultima Weapon, Cityscape Leveler, Extinguisher Battleship, Mirrodin Besiege, Psy Master Thopterist, Anointed Procession because we're making tokens, Efficient Construction, Cyberman Squadron. Non-legendary artifact creatures you control have Myriad, which means that when you attack with it, you make a copy for each opponent you're not attacking, and one of those copies attacks one of the other opponents or a planeswalker they control, but those tokens go away at the end of combat. And we have a lot of non-legendary artifact creatures. So yeah, a lot of Azorius artifacts today. What is that, 3? Yeah, because we had the Armorer, we had the Powerstone couple, and now we have the GoBots from Etsy. I was gonna say Transformers from Etsy, but like they feel like a knockoff of Hydrox. Because I was gonna say a knockoff of a knockoff, but I think GoBots predated Transformers by a bit. It's just Transformers had better marketing and also better animators on hand. Because GoBots looks horrible compared to Transformers. Let's be honest. And then, just like how Hydrox has a worse name than Oreo. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Being first doesn't always pay. You gotta be better. Anyway, let's do this. Let's optimize the printings. Oh, yeah. So, since the last time I checked, prices have changed, I guess. Or, with this many here, I didn't do this. Anyway, overwrite 32 cards. And then let's fix these. We could use the ones from Aether Drift, but I'm going to use the space ones. I really do like these ones. And then over here for the planes, Avatar: The Last Airbender. That is not coming out until the end of the year. Just to give a hint of when I'm recording this. Spider-Man hasn't come out. at the recording of this. I am still way ahead with my recordings, just because just some days I just feel like doing these recordings, even though just another hint, just to dox my place in space-time, the 32 deck challenge hasn't fully uploaded to YouTube yet. There's still another going out next Sunday, and then another 2 after that. So yeah, I am still in August. And at the end of August is the end of the 32 deck challenge. So, hello from the past. Anyway, we're going to use these ones, because I just don't feel that the ones from Aether Drift fit the aesthetic of space robots. So now this one's named Toby, because it's Tobias, Doomed Conqueror. Not a fan of this guy. We are an hour and a half in. And this guy's going to take up the rest of the video. I don't know if I'm going to... I have not looked on EDH Rec for any of the... Well, no, I went to the EDH Rec section on this to look at what other people are doing. And it was basically a lot of stuff that do stuff on Enter or do stuff on Dying. And I'm like, that's not really what I'm looking for. But let's get to it. So, Tobias Doom Conqueror is 2 a white and a blue for a 3/2 human soldier. When Tobias Doomed Conqueror dies, for each non-token creature you control that died this turn, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Cool. I hope I put Anointed Procession in this deck. Honestly, I hope I put Divine Visitation in this deck, but I know I didn't. But that is 2 ideas. I know some of the cards I put in this deck are, though. Oh, I have this in order by artifact and not by where its job in the deck. Select all. You go over here. There we go. So he creates black zombies. So now we have Ingo Rune Eyes. When she enters, we scry 3. That's neat. When she dies, we draw 3 cards if 3 or more creatures died this turn. Hordewing Scab. Other zombies you control have flying. Whenever 1 or more zombies you control deal combat damage to 1 or more of your opponents, you may draw cards equal to the number of opponents dealt damage this way. If you do, discard that many cards. Prophet of the Scarab. Vigilance. When this creature enters, draw cards equal to the number of zombies you control, or the number of zombie cards in your graveyard, whichever is greater. It's going to be in play. Gutterolf, Visionary Stitcher. Zombies you control have flying. And then you can also pay a blue and tap Geralf here to sacrifice another non-token creature, create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. Probably never going to use that ability if I'm being honest. Although I guess we could make a 4/4 zombie. No, it would be a 2/2 zombie because he only has 2 toughness. By sacrificing Tobias and then also getting another 2/2 zombie. It's just that we have to, pay his tax again. And then we have our non-artifact. Oh, wait. We did throw in Emeria Sky Runes on the hopes that we would have 7 or more planes in play at some point. So at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 7 or more planes, which is aspirational, I know, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's the whole purpose of that. But also just in case we have Misfailed Planes to put stuff at the bottom of our library for controlling 2 or more white permanents. Then we have Cleric class, which at standard doesn't matter. When you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1 instead. I don't even think we have a whole lot of life gaming in this deck. And then if we pay 4, we can make it whenever you gain life, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. Probably never going to happen. And then if we pay another 5 on top of that, when this class becomes level 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its toughness. So it's a one-time, eventually get something back. Gisela, the Broken Blade, flying first strike, lifelink. Oh, there's some lifelink for that other card. At the beginning of your end step, if you both own and control Gisela and a creature named Bruna, the Fading Light, exile them. Then meld them into Brisela, Voice of Nightmares, which I think I have to scroll all the way down here because hopefully it's under tokens. Nope, it's under extras because we have the Monarch. So, Brisela, Voice of Nightmares, is a 9/10 Eldrazi Angel. Normally we don't like Eldrazi, but this is a meld situation. So on the back of those cards in paper, each has half of this. So, flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink, your opponent can cast spells with mana value 3 or less, which is such an interesting restriction. Anyway, that's that. But you have to have both on the battlefield. And one of them costs 4, and the other one we'll figure out how much they cost. I believe we're in our mass disruption section now. I took out Bluster Squall and Cone of Cold because other things are in this deck. And we got Soul Ring, blah blah blah, nothing out of the ordinary here. But now we have Coin of Fate from Final Fantasy VI. Ugh. When this artifact enters, surveil 1. And then you can pay 3 and a white to exile 2 creature cards from your graveyard. Sacrifice this artifact. An opponent chooses one of the exile cards, you put that card at the bottom of your library, then return to the battlefield, and return the other to the battlefield tapped. You become the Monarch. Loyal Retainers, sacrifice Loyal Retainers, return target legendary creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only during your turn, and during main phase 1. One Last Job. It has Spree. So for base, you can just spend 2 and a white and do nothing. Which you can't actually do that. You actually have to choose one of these. But if you pay an additional 2, you get a target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then if you pay another 1 on top of that, you get a mount or vehicle from your graveyard to the battlefield. And if you pay another 1 on top of that, and you don't have to do these in order, but these are the options, you can return an aura or equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to the creature. Well, not that creature, but any creature you control. So this is a way to get a bunch of stuff back. Breath of Life. Sorcery. Take any one summon creature from your discard pile and put that creature into play. Treat it as though you had played it from your hand. This is from Portal. That's why they worded it like this. Enduring Renewal. Play with your hand revealed. If you would draw a card, reveal the top card of your library instead. If it's a creature card, put that card into your graveyard, otherwise draw a card. Whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from play, return it to your hand. False Defeat. Take any one creature card from your graveyard and put that creature into play. Late to Dinner. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and you also get a food token. Food token is 2 tap, sacrifice, gain 3 life. Luminous Broodmoth. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. So base cost for this enchantment is 2 and 2 white, but you can also kick it multiple times for 1 and a white each. Creatures you control get +1/+1. That is not a good amount of cost for that effect. It actually costs exactly 1 over what you would expect for that. But when Marshal's Anthem enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times you've kicked this. Resurrection, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Defy Death, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it's an angel, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters. Emerge from the Cocoon. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain 3 life. That's what the extra 1 white for. That's what the extra cost is for. Invoke Justice. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among any number of creatures and/or vehicles target player controls. Karmic Guide. This is actually a creature. Flying protection from black, which is mildly handy. It also has Echo, which means you have to pay it's another 3 and 2 white at the beginning of your next upkeep. Otherwise, you sacrifice this creature. When Karmic Guide enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Salvation Engine. When this vehicle attacks, return up to 1 target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. That does artifacts, not creatures. That's mildly annoying. I forgot that it was artifacts when I put it in this deck. So I can take that out and put in something else. Oh, I can put in that other thing. Actually, I have to read that thing again, because I'm apparently bad at knowing what cards do. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then return up to 2 target auras and/or equipment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. Flying, lifelink. When Angel of Indemnity enters the battlefield, return target permanent card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's a little bit more limited, but it has Encore, which means for 8, if this thing is in your discard pile, you can exile this card from your graveyard and then create a copy of it in play that for each opponent you have, which means you get that effect 3 times, up to 3 times, depending on how many opponents you still have. And then they can attack each one of them attacks one of your opponents, and then they go away at the end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery, since you got to do it during your turn so they can attack. 4 or less is probably not that big of a restriction. Dawn Break Reclaimer. At the beginning of your end step, choose a creature card in an opponent's graveyard. Then that player chooses a creature card in your graveyard. You may return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So what's nice is that I pick a card from them, they pick a card from me, and then I decide whether or not I want them to have me getting my creature back is worth them getting their creature back. So like if they don't pick a creature on the equal level of the one that I picked for them, then I'm like, nah, we ain't, no. Rescue Skiff. When this spacecraft enters, return target creature or enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you can also make it into a flying 5/6 for what it's worth with the station ability. Angel of Glory's Rise. When Angel of Glory's Rise enters the battlefield, exile all zombies and then return all human creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's mildly funny. You want to do that if something happens to all your zombies. Or maybe after you've attacked with your zombies. It doesn't matter. Then here's Bruna, the Fading Light, the other half of Gisela. When you cast the spell, you may return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So and she costs 7, so if you cast Gisela earlier and something happened to her, Bruna can get her back. Artisan of Kozilek, one of the few times I break my no Eldrazi rule. He has Annihilator too, which I don't like. So I just want an attack with him on principle. I would just use him for blocking. Unless the rest of the table was okay with it. But I would cast them for 9 because when you cast a spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's his purpose in the deck, being a 9-mana resurrection spell. Rhea Dawnbringer. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then we have Path to Exile, Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, Swords to Plowshares, Unwanted Remake, Parting Gust, Reality Shift, Generous Gift, Stroke of Midnight, Elspeth Conquers Death. It's in the removal section because its first chapter is exile target permanent opponent controls of mana value 3 or greater. And then chapter 2 is non-creature spells your opponent's control. Your opponent's cast costs 2 more to cast until your next turn. And the important one, if it gets to it, return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gets a +1/+1 counter on it, or a loyalty counter on it, depending on, what's appropriate. Starfall Invocation. Gift a card. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell. If you do, they draw a card before this spell fully resolves. Destroy all creatures. If the gift was promised, return a creature card from your graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. You draw a card, I get my creature back. I think that's fine. What must be done? Choose one. Let the world burn. Destroy all artifacts and creatures. Release Juno. That must be an Assassin's Creed specific piece of lore. Return target historic permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters if it's a creature. So this can either be a sweeper or a resurrection spell. Knight of the Doctor. Destroy all creatures. Return target legendary creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put your choice of first strike, vigilance, or lifelink counter on it. Portal of Phyrexia. Because why not? When Portal of Phyrexia enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard under the battlefield under your control. It becomes Phyrexian. Aven Eternal. When it enters the battlefield, amass 1, which just means we either put a +1/+1 counter on an army, or we create a 0/0 zombie army creature token, then put the +1/+1 counter on it. Creature tokens we control have flying. Zombie tokens we control have flying, and also it amasses 2. And then there we go with that. So there was a card I said I was going to remove, and I don't remember what it was. Salvation Engine. Then we go up here for Gandalf. Because this one, Gandalf the White. You may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Okay. If a legendary artifact or artifact entering or leaving, that's the important part. So that means we should get double the zombies. Those are the only 2 cards, and so we don't need that. Unselect. Oh, yep, we are at 150. So, like, there's not actually that many creatures. Well, there's 19. That's still, to me, not that many. And we don't have an abundance of board wipes, but because of how our commander is, we're not afraid of board wipes. And then I really want multiple ways of getting creatures back. Like, a lot of these are one-time deals. And notice I have no protection in here. I really should have had protection in here for the pieces like the Dawnbringer, if she costs 9, but so does Portal Phyrexia. Like, these things are important. Like the spacecraft, not this one, the rescue skiff. Nope. What was I thinking of? Oh, I was thinking of the vehicle that's no longer in here because it didn't really work how I wanted it to. But like anything that could bring more than one thing back, like if we ever get to 7 planes. But yeah, like this is another one where I'm like, I have an idea here, but I'm not doing my idea very well. I probably could take out a bunch of the one-time resurrecting spells. Huh. And put in more creatures. But like, I'm not entirely sure. This is one where definitely want to get advice from another person. Like, there's something here, I just haven't done it yet. Like, I probably definitely need way more ramp for what it's worth. Anyway, next week it looks like we're probably going to do Dimir and this one Rakdos deck. We'll probably skip over the Gruul and go straight to Selesnya. I mean, or we can throw in the Simic. It depends on how long stuff takes to do. But either way, I will see you then.